Hey everyone, thanks for tuning back into The Crime Whisper. Today's episode takes us straight to Tokyo, where hidden behind the bright city life are Tokyo crime stories you won't believe. Tokyo never truly slept beneath the endless glow of neon. The city pulsed like a living organism, its veins running through crowded alleys, smoky bars, and train stations that swallowed millions each day. To the outsider, it was order and elegance, punctual trains, spotless streets, polite smiles, but behind that flawless mask, Tokyo's underworld thrived silent, ruthless, and ancient detective Hiroshi Sato knew both sides well. To his neighbors and he was a quiet man in his 40s, with a tired smile and a fondness for late-night ramen. To his colleagues in the Tokyo Metropolitan Police, he was the kind of detective who took cases others didn't want, murders too messy, victims too insignificant, leads too tangled. Hiroshi carried the reputation of a man who didn't give up, but also of one who was stubborn enough to make enemies in both the streets and the precinct. It was a cold February night when the call came. A body had been found in Kabuki, the infamous entertainment district of Shinjuku. Hostess bars, love hotels, and underground gambling dens made the neighborhood a playground for businessmen and a feeding ground for predators. The victim was a man in his 30s, dressed in a tailored gray suit. His throat had been slit so cleanly it looked almost surgical. No wallet, no phone, just a slip of paper tucked into his breast pocket, with a single word written in red ink: debt. By the time Hiroshi arrived, the flashing red lights of patrol cars had drawn a crowd. Hostesses in glittering dresses whispered behind manicured hands, while drunk salarymen craned their necks for a glimpse of the spectacle. The body lay slumped near the entrance of a narrow alley, blood pooling beneath a neon sign advertising Paradise Club Yakuza hit. His partner, Detective Ayumi Tanaka, muttered as she crouched beside the corpse. Ayumi was younger, sharp-eyed, and ambitious. Unlike Hiroshi, she hadn't yet learned the futility of trying to fight the system from within. To theatrical, Hiroshi replied, pointing to the paper. This wasn't a quiet execution. Someone wanted to send a message. Ayumi frowned. Debt to who? That question lingered in Hiroshi's mind long after they zipped the body into the black bag. The victim was soon identified as Takumi Watanabe, a mid-level loan officer at a regional bank. No criminal record, no known gang ties, but as Hiroshi dug deeper, whispers began to surface. Takumi had a second life at night. He moved in circles of illegal loan sharks, yamekin, whose operations existed in the shadows of Tokyo's financial sector. They lent desperate men money at crushing interest rates, often backed by Yakuza muscle. Hiroshi's sources in Kabucho spoke of a rising figure in this world, Ryuji the Viper Kondo, a ruthless enforcer known for his snake tattoos and talent for making debtors vanish. Rumor had it, Ryuji had broken away from one of the old Yakuza syndicates and was building his own empire, blending traditional brutality with modern tech scams. Takumi's murder, Hiroshi realized, was more than just punishment. It was a message to anyone who thought of crossing the new order. But something about the scene nagged at him. The precision of the cut, the placement of the note. This wasn't style. Ryuji preferred baseball bats, blunt force, and terror. This killing felt colder, professional. Maybe we're looking at two wars, Hiroshi muttered as he stood outside the police station, smoking under the pale glow of a vending machine. The old gangs versus the new blood. Ayumi joined him, her breath visible in the winter air, and Takumi got caught in the middle. Or, Hiroshi said, exhaling smoke. He knew something he wasn't supposed to. The deeper Hiroshi dug, the stranger the case became. Takumi's bank records revealed missing funds, millions of yen siphoned through shell companies. The money trail led not to Ryu, but to a company registered under the name Shindo Enterprises, a legitimate-looking firm with ties to real estate and construction. But anyone who had worked Tokyo's streets knew the name. Shindo was an old Yakuza family, one of the last clinging to the shadows after Japan's tightening laws had weakened their hold. Two predators circling the same prey, Ayumi said. When Hiroshi laid out the evidence, Takumi was laundering money for the Shindo, but he was also dealing with Ryuji. Hiroshi nodded slowly. And now he's dead. The question is, who pulled the knife? The case had already started to attract unwanted attention. A gray sedan had appeared near Hiroshi's apartment twice, parked just long enough for him to notice his phone clicked with static during calls. Someone was watching, and they didn't want the truth uncovered still. Hiroshi couldn't stop. The city had a way of consuming men who looked the other way. He'd seen it before colleagues bought off. Evidence buried. Victims forgotten. That wasn't going to be him, not this time. Manda's Tokyo's neon heart kept pulsing through the night. Hiroshi knew this was only the beginning. Detective Hiroshi Sato wasn't new to being followed in his 20 years on the force. He had made enough enemies in smoky back rooms and behind closed doors to know when eyes lingered too long still. The gray sedan that kept tailing him wasn't subtle. Whoever was behind it wanted him to know. He mentioned it to Ayumi the next morning as they walked into the homicide division of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police. Gray sedan, blacked out plates. Third time this week. Ayumi frowned. Shindo family. Could be Oruji's boys. Either way. We're poking the wrong nest there, Captain. A graying man named Okabe waved them into his office before Hiroshi could pour his first coffee. The blinds were drawn. His face pale. The Watanabe case is being reassigned. Okabe said flatly. Organized Crime Division wants it. You two can close your files. Ayumi looked shocked. What? We're barely scratching the surface. This isn't just some street murder. It's above your pay grade. Okabe snapped. Drop it. Hiroshi studied him. Okabe wasn't a coward, but he was a survivor. Someone had leaned on him hard. Captain, Hiroshi said evenly. At least let us finish interviewing Watanabe's contacts. Okabe's jaw tightened. 1 week, then you hand everything over. The clock was ticking. Hiroshi and Ayumi dove into Takumi Watanabe's world by day. He'd been a diligent banker by night. He'd walked Tokyo's back alleys, whispering promises of easy money to men and women drowning in debt. One name kept surfacing. Mika Ito, a hostess at Paradise Club, the same bar where Takumi's body had been dumped. She was in her late 20s. Known for her sharp wit and ability to charm secrets out of customers, they found her smoking outside the club. A thin coat wrapped tightly around her sequined dress. Her eyes darted when Hiroshi showed his badge. I already told the police. Everything, she said quickly. Then tell us again. Hiroshi replied off the record. She hesitated, then flicked her cigarette into the gutter. Takumi was in trouble. He borrowed from the wrong people. Shindo, yes, but also Ryuji. He thought he could play them off each other. Said he had information, something big enough to buy his freedom. What kind of information? Ayumi asked. Mika lowered her voice. A deal, construction contracts. Billions of yen. Shindo were laundering money through banks. But Takumi found proof they were using shell companies tied to politicians. If he leaked it, it would have burned them all. Hiroshi felt a chill. Corruption was no stranger to Japan, but direct ties between Yakuza syndicates and high-ranking officials were dynamite. No wonder Takumi's throat had been cut before they could press further. A black van rolled slowly down the street. Mika's face drained of color. I can't talk anymore, they're watching. She slipped back into the club, leaving Hiroshi with more questions than answers. The next day, Hiroshi visited an old informant in Ikebukuro, a retired gangster named Kenji, who ran a shabby soba shop. Kenji had once been with the Shindo family before age and prison time forced him out. Takumi Watanabe, Kenji said, shaking his head as he kneaded dough. Stupid kid, thought he could outsmart both sides. The Shindo have roots too deep. They build skyscrapers by day, and by night they own the shadows. He's a snake with ambition, but ambition makes enemies. Did Takumi work for Ryuji? Hiroshi asked. Kenji's eyes narrowed. Takumi was a courier. He moved cash, sometimes documents, but he got greedy. I heard he copied files he wasn't supposed to see. Plans for a development project in Odaiba, billions on the line, and guess what? Both Ryuji and the Shindo wanted it. Hiroshi left the soba shop with his mind racing Odaiba, the reclaimed land along Tokyo Bay, full of glittering malls and high-rise condos. If the underworld had its claws in those projects. The scale of corruption was staggering that night. Hiroshi's phone buzzed with an unknown number. He answered cautiously. Detective Sato. The voice was female. Hurried, this is Mika. I don't have much time. Meet me at Shinjuku Station, East Exit. Midnight. I have something Takumi gave me. Before he died, the line went. Didomi insisted on coming, though Hiroshi knew the risks. Shinjuku Station at midnight was a maze of flickering signs and thinning crowds. They waited near the east exit, under the glowing billboards at 12:15. Mika appeared. Her hair was hidden under a hoodie. Her eyes wide with fear, she pressed a small USB drive into Hiroshi's hand. Takumi said this had everything: names, companies, transfers. If you expose it, they'll kill you just like they killed him before Hiroshi could respond. Headlights flared, a motorcycle roared past, and a figure in a black helmet fired 2 shots. Mika crumpled, blood blooming across her hoodie. Ayumi screamed, ducking behind a pillar. Hiroshi dragged Mika out of the line of fire, but it was too late. Her breathing was shallow, her gaze distant with her last strength. She whispered, "Don't trust police." Then her body went limp. The motorcycle vanished. Into the night, sirens wailed in the distance. Hiroshi stared at the USB in his hand, its plastic casing warm from Mika's grip. Ayumi's voice trembled. Hiroshi, this thing's bigger than we thought. Hiroshi looked down at Mika's lifeless body, the neon lights reflecting in the pool of blood. Bigger. Yes, and far deadlier. He slipped the USB into his coat pocket, knowing that whatever was on it could topple powerful men or bury him and Ayumi 6 feet under and in the neon jungle of Tokyo. The hunt had only just begun. Hiroshi Sato didn't sleep that night. The image of Mika collapsing in his arms haunted him, but it was the USB drive that weighed heavier. He sat in his cramped apartment, blinds drawn, laptop glowing in the dark wind. He inserted the drive. Folders appeared labeled in neat English. Contracts, transfers, contacts inside. Hiroshi found scanned documents detailing construction bids for luxury towers in Odaiba and Minato. The contracts bore the names of major real estate companies, but every paper trail led back to Shindo Enterprises. There were wire transfers. Billions of yen funneled through Hong Kong banks, hidden offshore accounts. But it wasn't just the Shindo. Another folder, marked contacts, revealed names of politicians, bureaucrats, even police officials. Bribes disguised as consulting fees, campaign donations traced back to shell companies. One name froze Hiroshi in place. Captain Okabe, his own superiore knee, leaned over his shoulder, her face pale. My God, this is systemic. They own everyone from city planners to our own precinct. Hiroshi closed the laptop. If this leaks, Shindo falls, but so do half the people running Tokyo. Ayumi shook her head. And they won't let that happen. The next morning, Hiroshi arrived at the precinct to find Okabe waiting in his office. His captain's face was calm, but his eyes were cold. Sit down, Okabe said, motioning. Hiroshi complied, masking his unease. I hear you were at Shinjuku Station last night, Okabe began. Mika Ito, tragic accident witnesses, said you were there when she died. Hiroshi kept his tone. Even she wanted to talk. Gave us nothing, just paranoia. Okabe studied him for a long moment, then he leaned forward. Sato, you've always been a good detective. Don't let this case ruin you. Organized crime division has it now. Turn over everything. Hiroshi forced a smile. Of course, Captain, but as he left the office, his stomach twisted. Okabe knew, and if Okabe was on Shindo's payroll, then Hiroshi and Ayumi were marked that evening. Ayumi called Hiroshi to meet at a quiet cafe near Yoyogi Park. She slid into the booth, clutching a newspaper front page. She said the headline read, "Hostess murdered in Shinjuku, police call it gang retaliation." The article painted Mika as a woman involved in criminal networks, suggesting her death was inevitable. They're rewriting the narrative already, Ayumi said bitterly. She risked her life to expose the truth, and now she's just another casualty. Hiroshi sipped his coffee. They want to scare us, make us think it's pointless. Ayumi lowered her voice. Then maybe we need help outside the system, journalists, someone who'll publish no matter what. Hiroshi considered it dangerous. Yes, but it might be their only chance that night. As rain slicked the streets of Shinjuku, Hiroshi sought out Ryuji. The Viper Kondo, the gangster's lair, was a private club hidden behind a noodle shop inside. Men with tattoos crawling up their arms played mahjong and smoked cigar suji, sat at the head table. Snake tattoo peeking from his collar, his sharp eyes narrowed when Hiroshi approached Detective Sato. Ryuji said with a smirk, "You're either brave or suicidal." "I came for information," Hiroshi said evenly. "Watanabe Mika Shindo? You know what I'm talking about." Ryuji laughed. "You think I care about some banker? Or a dead hostess?" "Shindo killed them, not me." "Strange," Hiroshi said. "Because the USBI have suggests you were also in the game." The laughter stopped. Men shifted uneasily. Ryuji's smile vanished. "You're playing with fire," Ryuji said coldly. "But if you want the truth, fine. Shindo owns the city council, half the cops, and every construction company worth a damn, but they're old men, corrupt, fat, complacent. I'm the future. I don't slit throats quietly in Alizai. Build empires by laundering money through Odaba." Hiroshi Eskedriji leaned back. "Exactly, and Watanabe tried to blackmail me with those files. Shindo killed him before I could. Now you're holding his ghost." Hiroshi kept his face neutral, but his mind raced. If Ryuji was telling the truth, the USB was powerful enough to destroy Shindo or hand Ryuji the throne. "You should give it to me," Ryuji said softly. "I can protect you. The police won't. Shindo won't, but me. I reward loyalty." Hiroshi rose. "I'll think about it," as he left the smoky club. Hiroshi knew he had just made another enemy. 2 nights later, Hiroshi's apartment was broken into, the lock smashed, drawers ransacked, laptop stolen. But the USB remained safe hidden inside the hollow of a bathroom light fixture. Whoever searched hadn't found it. A note lay on his table, scrawled in red ink. "Last warning, Ayumi arrived an hour later." Breathless Hiroshi. "We can't keep this up. They'll kill us. They already tried with Mika. You saw what happened." "I saw," Hiroshi said quietly, "which is why we can't stop." Ayumi hesitated, then pulled a card from her pocket. "I know a journalist, Keiko Arai, investigative reporter. She's written about Yakuza ties before, if anyone can publish this. It's her." Hiroshi took the card, staring at the name. The decision weighed on him like lead. Trusting an outsider could expose the truth. Thor doomed them faster still. Mika's last words echoed in his ears. "Don't trust police." Maybe it was time to listen. The next evening, Hiroshi and Ayumi met Keiko in a dim cafe near Ueno. She was in her 30s, with sharp eyes that scanned everything. "You have something?" she asked without pleasantries. Hiroshi slid the USB across the table. "Proof of corruption, Shindo politicians. Police, it's all there." Keiko inserted the drive into her laptop. Her eyes widened as she scrolled this. "This could shake Tokyo to its core, but once I publish, they'll come after me. After you, hard." Hiroshi nodded grimly. "We know." Ayumi leaned forward. "Then we need to move fast before they bury us all." Keiso closed her laptop with a snap. "Give me 3 days after that. The city won't look the same." As they stepped back into the rainy Tokyo night, Hiroshi couldn't shake the feeling that 3 days might be longer than any of them could survive. The rain had not stopped for 3 days. Tokyo's streets glistened like mirrors. Neon reflected in puddles, the city itself seeming to hold its breath. Detective Hiroshi Sato counted every hour since he and Ayumi had handed the USB to Keiko Arai. If the journalist was still alive, she was either preparing the story or she was already silenced. On the morning of the 3rd day, Hiroshi found his apartment door unlocked. He entered cautiously, hand on his service pistol. The smell of cigarette smoke filled the air. Captain Okabe was waiting inside, seated at the kitchen table, a gun resting casually in front of him. "Sit down, Hiroshi Okabe," said. Hiroshi didn't move, breaking and entering. "That's sloppy. Even for you, you shouldn't have crossed me." Okabe's voice was calm, but there was venom in it. "You think you can expose men who built this city? You think a journalist will save you? They'll bury her, and they'll bury you." Hiroshi's jaw tightened. "You were supposed to protect the people instead. You sold them to Shindo." Okabe's eyes flashed. "You don't understand. This isn't corruption, it's order. Shindo keeps the streets clean. Politicians get their projects, everyone eats without them. Tokyo falls into chaos." Hiroshi shook his head. "That's not order, that's rot." Okabe sighed, picking up his gun. "I liked you, Hiroshi, but you made the wrong choice." Before he could raise the weapon, a gunshot cracked. Okabe's body jerked forward. Blood blooming across his chest. Behind him stood Ayumi, pistol smoking. "He was about to kill you," she whispered, lowering her weapon with shaking hands. Hiroshi stared at his captain's lifeless body. He felt no triumph, only the crushing weight of inevitability that night. Hiroshi and Ayumi met Keiko in a deserted warehouse near Tokyo Bay. She looked pale, exhausted. "I've been followed for 2 days, she said. "My editor got a call warning him not to touch the story. He refused to publish. He's scared." "So it's over?" Ayumi asked. Bitterly, Keiko shook her head. "Not over, just harder. I have connections abroad. If I can get the files out of Japan, foreign media will run it, but we need time and protection." Hiroshi clenched his fists. "Time is the one thing we don't have up." Sudden noise echoed through the warehouse. Footsteps. Shadows moved. Dozens of men emerged from the darkness, tattoos crawling across their skin. At their center was Ryuji the Viper Kondo. Smirking as always. "Detective," Ryuji said, "you should have listened. You had the chance to hand me the USB now. You won't leave this building alive." Ayumi raised her gun. "Stay back." Ryuji chuckled. "Do you really think 2 cops can stop me?" He snapped his fingers. The men surged forward. Gunfire erupted. Hiroshi and Ayumi ducked behind crates, bullets splintering wood. Keiko screamed, clutching her laptop. Hiroshi fired back, dropping one thug, then another, but the numbers kept coming. Gumi took a graze to the arm, but kept firing, teeth clenched. Hiroshi's magazine ran dry. He drew his backup revolver. The air filled with smoke, gunpowder, and the metallic temps of blood. Finally, silence. Bodies littered the warehouse floor. Only Ryuji remained, standing at the center like a king. He clapped slowly, mockingly. "You fight well, detective, but you're bleeding for nothing. Shindo will crush you, politicians will laugh, and your journalist friend will be forgotten." Hiroshi stepped forward, revolver aimed at Ryuji's chest. "Maybe, but at least one of us won't see tomorrow for the first time." Ryuji's smirk faltered. A single gunshot echoed through the warehouse. Ryuji collapsed, eyes wide, snake tattoo disappearing under a pool of blood. Keiko, trembling, closed her laptop. "The files are copied. I'll get them out of the country, I swear." Hiroshi nodded, though he knew what awaited her. More threats, more shadows. But maybe, just maybe, the truth would find daylight. The 3 of them staggered out into the Tokyo night. Sirens wailed in the distance. Ayumi pressed a hand to her bleeding arm. Pale, but defiant, Hiroshi felt exhaustion in his bones, but also a strange clarity. They had survived. 4 days later, international headlines exploded. Leaked documents revealed Tokyo's deep underworld ties. Shindo Enterprises was named. Politicians scrambled to deny involvement. Arrests followed, though many suspects simply vanished in Tokyo. The police pretended to celebrate the anti-corruption victory, but Hiroshi knew the truth. Shindo had taken a blow. Yes, but the roots were deeper than any one case could cut. For every Ryuji that fell, another Viper would rise. Captain Okabe's death was ruled a suicide. Hiroshi and Ayumi weren't questioned. Better for the department to keep its secrets buried one night. Hiroshi stood on a pedestrian bridge overlooking Shindo. Neon signs blazing against the sky. The city roared below him, alive, hungry, indifferent. Yami joined him, bandaged but steady. "Do you think it mattered?" she asked. Softly, Hiroshi took a long drag from his cigarette. Mika thought it did. Watanabe thought it did. Maybe that's enough. They stood in silence, watching the endless tide of people flowing through the streets. Tokyo would keep moving, as it always had, order on the surface, chaos beneath, but somewhere in the noise, the whisper of truth lingered, and Hiroshi knew that as long as he breathed, he'd keep listening. Tokyo looked different in the weeks after the scandal broke. Newspapers filled their front pages with words like corruption, embezzlement, and organized crime links. Politicians, resigned in disgrace executives were retired quietly for the public. It was a storm, loud, shocking, but brief. Tokyoites were too busy with trains to catch, deadlines to meet, and bills to pay within a month. Neon lights of Shinjuku burned as bright as ever. Nightlife thrived, and most had already moved on. But for Detective Hiroshi Sato, nothing felt the same. He returned to his precinct as though nothing had happened, but he noticed the sidelong glances. Whispers stopped when he entered rooms. Colleagues avoided his desk. As though corruption were contagious, Hiroshi knew better than to trust the smiles. Some of the men who had shaken hands with Shindo were still there, only deeper in hiding. Gumi, now with her arm fully healed, carried herself differently, too more cautious, more calculating. She'd lost her youthful idealism in the gunfire of that warehouse, yet she stayed, and Hiroshi respected her for it. "You ever think about quitting?" she asked one evening, as they walked out of the station every day. Hiroshi admitted, "But then I remember, if we leave, they win." Ayumi smiled faintly. "You sound like Mika." The name lingered between them, a ghost that never left. Keiko Arai became a target almost immediately after publishing the files abroad. Her articles ran in international outlets, exposing the Shindo syndicate's reach. Tokyo officials denounced her as a liar, a foreign puppet, a sensationalist. Yet abroad, she was hailed as brave, even heroic. When Hiroshi met her again, it was in a quiet corner of a Narita airport cafe. She wore sunglasses, a scarf covering half her face. "I'm leaving," she said softly. "Too many threats, men following me, anonymous calls. They want me gone, and I don't want to end up like Mika." Hiroshi nodded. "Where will you go?" "Europe, somewhere quiet, somewhere they can't reach me." She paused, then slid a sealed envelope across the table. "Inside are copies of everything, more than what I published. Keep it safe if anything happens to me. You'll know what to do." Hiroshi slipped the envelope into his coat. "Take care, Keiko." She gave him a sad smile. "You too. Detective Tokyo needs people like you, but don't let it eat you alive." Then she was gone. Weeks later, the Shindo family struck back, not in courtrooms, but in the streets. A wave of unexplained fires swept through rival businesses. A young politician who had been named in the leaks died in what the papers called a traffic accident. In whispers, said Ryuji's remaining lieutenants were regrouping, vowing revenge for their fallen boss. The old order was wounded, but not dead. One rainy night, Hiroshi was called to a crime scene in Shibuya. A man had been executed in an alley. 2 bullets to the head. On his chest lay a folded piece of paper, marked with the drawing of a snake. Yumi crouched beside the body, frowning. "Ryuji's dead, so why are his men still leaving messages?" Hiroshi stared at the snake's symbol. "Water washing over the corpse. Because snakes shed their skin doesn't mean they're gone." Ayumi looked up at him. "You think someone new has taken his place?" Hiroshi lit a cigarette, the smoke curling in the rain. "No, I think Ryuji planned for this, and now, whoever wears the skin of the viper is coming for us at home that night." Hiroshi poured himself a glass of whiskey and opened the envelope. Keiko had left him inside were more documents, names of foreign investors, secret accounts in Macau and Singapore, even intelligence reports suggesting ties between the Yakuza and overseas crime syndicates. This wasn't just about Tokyo, it was bigger, global. He closed the envelope and leaned back, exhaustion heavy on his shoulders. For a moment, he considered burning it all, living quietly, forgetting the shadows. But Mika's last words echoed in his head. Don't trust police. If the police couldn't be trusted, If the system was rigged, then maybe the only thing left was men like him, tired, flawed, stubborn, who refused to quit. He raised his glass in a silent toast to the ghosts of Watanabe and Mika. Then, he drained it in one long swallow. The following week, Hiroshi received a plain envelope on his desk. At the precinct inside was a single photograph. Ayumi, walking home, unaware of the camera beneath it. A note. "You took the Viper, now we take her." Hiroshi crushed the photo in his fist. Heart pounding. The war wasn't over. It had only just begun in the endless neon nights of Tokyo. The crime whispers would never stop. The photograph haunted Hiroshi, kept it locked in his desk drawer. But the image of Ayumi walking home, unaware of the shadow behind her, gnawed at him. It wasn't just a threat, it was a declaration of war. Whoever sent it wanted him rattled, paranoid, off-balancing. It was working for the first time in years. Hiroshi asked Ayumi to stay at his apartment. She resisted at first, too proud, too stubborn, but after seeing the hard set of his jaw, she relented. "You think they'll come after me directly?" she asked one night, as they sat in silence. "The city humming outside his window, they don't bluff," Hiroshi said. "Not with something like this." Ayumi glanced at him, then at the gun holstered on the table. "Then we go on the offensive, whoever's leading them now. We find him first." Their first lead came from an unexpected place, the underground hostess bars of Roppongi. A former informant of Mika's reached out, trembling, insisting he had seen the new Viper in a club, surrounded by guards. Hiroshi and Ayumi followed the trail to a neon-soaked alley, where laughter spilled out of a basement lounge inside. Smoke and perfume choked the air. Men in suits laughed too loudly, while women in glittering dresses pretended to listen at the back. A private booth glowed under dim red light. A man sat there, sharp suit, shaved head, tattoo of a coiled serpent crawling up his neck. His eyes met Hiroshi's for just a second. Calculating, the man raised his glass in mock salute. "Looks like he knows who we are." Ayumi whispered. Hiroshi didn't flinch. Good means were close, but before they could act, two hulking guards moved in, blocking their path. By the time they pushed past, the booth was empty. The snake tattoo gone into the Tokyo nights. The next morning, a new crime scene rocked the city. A mid-level politician found hanged in his office, a serpent symbol carved into his desk. The newspapers called it suicide. Hiroshi knew better. "This isn't just about revenge," he muttered, studying the mark. "This is theater. He's sending messages." Ayumi frowned. "To who?" "To everyone," Hiroshi said. "The streets, the syndicates, the cops. He's announcing himself." 2 nights later, the war came to Hiroshi's doorstep. He and Ayumi returned home to find his apartment door ajar inside. The whiskey bottle on his counter was shattered. On the wall, scrawled in black paint, was a single phrase: "Snakes don't die, they shed." Ayumi raised her gun instantly, sweeping the rooms empty. Whoever had been there was gone. "They were inside," she said, her voice tight. "They wanted us to know," Hiroshi replied, his hand clenched into a fist. "They wanted us to feel hunted." The next week became a blur of surveillance, stakeouts, and dead ends. Every time Hiroshi thought he had a lead, it dissolved into smoke. Witnesses vanished, informants turned up dead. Then came the phone, Kala distorted voice, low and calm. "You took the old Viper from us, now you will watch as we take everything from you, your partner, your honor, your city." Hiroshi's teeth clenched. "Coward, show yourself." The voice chuckled. "Patience. Detective snakes strike when you least expect." Click. Silence. That night, Ayumi refused to leave the station. She pored over files, tracing financial flows, linking names to offshore accounts. "There," she said suddenly, stabbing a page with her pen. "A new shell company registered last month. Same signature as Shindo's old network. Whoever's running this picked up where Ryoji left off." Hiroshi scanned the document and the address. Ayumi smirked grimly. A luxury penthouse in Ginza. Fitting for a king snake. They struck at midnight, armed with a small tactical unit. Hiroshi and Ayumi stormed the penthouse. The doors burst open, officers flooding the marble halls, but instead of gunfire, They found Silence rooms stripped bare, champagne glasses still wet, a single serpent tattoo drawn on the wall in blood-red ink. He knew we were coming. Ayumi whispered. Hiroshi's jaw tightened. Means someone tipped him off. He turned to the officers behind him. Scanning faces, some looked nervous. Too nervous the rot wasn't gone. It was inside the forces. They drove back through the Tokyo night, neon blurring past the windows. Ayumi broke the silence. You think we can actually win this? Hiroshi kept his eyes on the road. Winning doesn't matter, surviving does, and making sure they don't own this city when we're gone. Ayumi leaned back, staring at the skyline. Then, we'd better be ready, because he's not just another gangster. He's building something bigger. Hiroshi exhaled smoke from his cigarette, the ember glowing in the dark. Then, so are we. The war for Tokyo had only begun. Rain hammered down on Tokyo, turning Shinjuku's neon glow into bleeding rivers of color. Detective Hiroshi Sato sat in his unmarked car, cigarette smoldering between his fingers. Ayumi was in the passenger seat, binoculars pressed to her eyes. They had been watching the Kabucho district for 3 nights straight, and tonight, it felt different. The snakes are gathering, Ayumi muttered, nodding toward a line of black sedans sliding to the curb outside a nightclub. Men with tattoos crawling up their necks stepped out, umbrellas snapping open in unison inside the club. Rival syndicate leaders were already waiting. This wasn't a meeting, it was a war council. They're planning to split the city, Hiroshi said quietly. Divide it street by street, whoever this new Viper is. He's strong enough to make them bow. Ayumi lowered her binoculars, jaw set. Then we take him before he becomes untouchable. But before they could act, chaos erupted. Gunfire exploded from the building's 2nd floor. Shards of glass rained onto the street as men screamed and ducked. A rival faction had struck first. Masked shooters sprayed bullets into the sedans, shredding doors and bodies. Alike. Hiroshi shoved the car door open, gun drawn. Move. The street descended into carnage, engines roaring, tires screeching, men firing wildly into the rain. One masked gunman spotted Hiroshi and raised his rifle. A single shot rang out. The man crumpled. Ayumi, lowering her smoking pistol beside him. Stay sharp, she barked. More masked shooters poured out of alleyways, surrounding the syndicate meeting. But something was off. Their moves were too coordinated, too precise. This wasn't a rival gang, this is military, Hiroshi realized. Professionals. Ayumi's eyes widened. Mercenaries. A grenade clattered onto the street. Hiroshi grabbed Ayumi and threw her down behind their car. The blast tore through to sedans, flames lighting up the night. When the smoke cleared, the survivors were gone. Only corpses and burning cars remained on one of the dead mercenaries. Hiroshi found a patch sewn onto his vest, a snake coiled around a katana. The new Viper, he muttered. He's not uniting gangs, he's replacing them with his own army. The next morning, Tokyo's headlines screamed of gang violence and terrorism. Officials condemned the bloodshed, vowing crackdowns. But Hiroshi knew the truth. Those same officials were taking orders from the Viper at the precinct. He stormed into his captain's office, slamming the bloody patch onto the desk. We've got mercenaries turning Shinjuku into a war zone, and you're still pretending this is a turf dispute. Hiroshi growled. The captain didn't flinch. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. You're too close. Sato, you and Ayumi, both stand down. Hiroshi's fists clenched. Stand down. People are dying in the streets. The captain's eyes hardened. That's an order. Something in the silence told Hiroshi everything. His captain wasn't just complicit, he was owned. When Hiroshi walked out, Ayumi was waiting in the hall. What did he say? That we're on our own, Hiroshi muttered that night. Hiroshi received another envelope at his apartment door. Inside was a photo. The mercenaries in Shinjuku, standing in formation, their faces hidden by masks. In the center stood the man with the serpent tattoo up his neck, the new Viper on the back, scrawled in crimson ink. Tokyo is mine, try to stop me. Days later, bodies started turning up in rivers and alleys. Gang bosses who refused to swear loyalty were executed. their throats slit. Snakes painted on the walls in their blood. Small businesses were shaken down by masked men. Even the police seemed to vanish from certain neighborhoods, leaving the Viper's forces free to roam Shinjuku, Shibuya, Roppongi district by district. Tokyo was being carved into a serpent's empire. Yami slammed a file shut in frustration. At this rate, he'll control half the city before the month is out, and the brass won't lift a finger. Then we stop waiting for orders, Hiroshi said. His voice was low. Dangerous. We make our own war. They started small, hit and run tactics, striking at the Viper's supply lines. Safe houses raided drug shipments, intercepted money seized each time. Hiroshi left behind the same calling card, a cigarette stub crushed onto the serpent symbol. Soon, whispers spread in the underworld. The ghost of the old wars was back, a detective who refused to die, haunting the Viper's empire. But the Viper didn't retaliate with fear, he retaliated with precision. One night, Ayumi's car was ambushed. A truck slammed into her from the side. Flipping her vehicle onto its roof, she crawled out, bloodied. Just before the truck exploded into flames. When Hiroshi arrived, Ayumi was trembling, rage burning through her cuts and bruises. They wanted me dead. She hissed. No, Hiroshi said grimly. Helping her up, they wanted to send a message. 2 days later, Hiroshi received another call, the same distorted voice. Calm as ever. You can't stop what's already begun. Tokyo will shed its skin. You and your partner are just dust in the process. Hiroshi's grip on the receiver tightened. You made one mistake. Viper, you came after her, and for that, I'll never stop. The voice chuckled. We'll see. Detective, let's see how long you survive in my city. Click. That night, as Hiroshi stood on the rooftop of a crumbling apartment block, Tokyo spread beneath him, lights shimmering, trains roaring, people living unaware of the war brewing in their veins. Yumi stood beside him, bandaged but unbroken. This city, Hiroshi muttered, eyes on the skyline. It belongs to no one. Not snakes, not corrupt cops, not politicians. It belongs to the people who bleed for it. Ayumi cocked her pistol, her face hardened by firelight. Then let's bleed them dry first. Hiroshi exhaled smoke into the rain, a grim smile curling on his lips. The Viper wants a war, he said. We'll give him one. The neon night was about to drown in blood. The war began in whispers, and then it screamed. By the end of the week, Shinjuku looked like a war zone. Bars shuttered early, their neon signs. Dark taxi drivers refused to enter. Kabukicho shopkeepers barricaded their doors. The air carried the stench of gasoline and gunpowder. Viper's army moved like shadows, masked men marching in lines, extorting shopkeepers in broad daylight, driving out anyone who resisted. But this wasn't just gang violence anymore. It was organized, militarized. The city was being consumed. Detective Hiroshi Sato and Ayumi knew they couldn't stop the tide head-on, but they could bleed it, one strike at a time. Their first target, an abandoned warehouse near Shinakubo, according to Ayumi's sources. It had become a stockpile for weapons shipments smuggled from overseas. We take this out, we send a message, Ayumi whispered, adjusting the strap on her bulletproof vest. Hiroshi checked his pistol, his jaw tight. Not a message, a declaration. They slipped in through a side entrance, the smell of oil and rust clinging to the air inside. Crates were stacked high, marked with foreign lettering. Men in masks patrolled, rifles slung casually over their shoulder. Sumi crouched, counting at least a dozen. Hiroshi lit his last cigarette, the ember glowing faintly. Plenty to share. The fight erupted fast, and Brutalumi's first shot dropped a guard before he could raise the alarm. Hiroshi charged forward, moving between crates, firing with precision bullets, shredded wood, sparks flying from ricochets. One masked soldier lunged at Hiroshi with a knife. Hiroshi slammed him into a crate, twisting his arm until it snapped. Another came from behind, only for Ayumi to drop him with a clean shot to the chest. By the time the last gunman fell, the warehouse was silent, except for the ringing of shell casings on concrete. Ayumi wiped sweat from her forehead to easy. Hiroshi pried open one of the crates inside, Wasn't rifles or ammunition, it was bricks of heroin, billions of yen in street value. It's bait, he muttered. He wanted us here. A faint beep filled the air. Hiroshi's eyes widened. Ayumi, move. They dove for cover as the warehouse exploded, fire ripping through the walls, heat slamming into them like a wave. When the smoke cleared, they crawled from the rubble, bruised, coughing. Alive, the heroin was ash. Their message had been received the following morning. Tokyo woke to chaos. Headlines screamed, "Warehouse Inferno in Shinokubo, gang war escalates on the streets." It was worse. Businesses that refused to pay protection were torched. A police officer was found executed in his patrol car. The serpent symbol carved into his forehead. The city was spiraling, and the brass still looked the other way. Tokyo doesn't feel like Tokyo anymore, Ayumi muttered as they walked through the smoldering remains of a burned-out ramen shop. It feels. Hiroshi lit another cigarette. That's because it has been, and unless we end this soon, there won't be a city left to save that night. They met Keiko Arai. In a cramped safe house she had returned to Tokyo in secret. Armed with new evidence smuggled from contacts abroad, the Viper isn't just some gangster, she explained, spreading documents across the table. He's tied into global networks, arms dealers, narcotics cartels, even political financiers. He's not fighting for Tokyo. He's building an empire that stretches beyond Japan. Ayumi scanned the papers, her eyes narrowing. So he's untouchable? No, Hiroshi said, voice steady. Everyone bleeds. Keiso leaned closer, her expression sharp. Then you'll need more than bullets. You'll need proof enough to bring the whole system down with him. Hiroshi smirked faintly. Good thing I stopped playing by the system a long time ago. 2 nights later, the Viper struck back in ambush in the alleys of Shibuya. Hiroshi and Ayumi were cornered by at least 20 masked men. Gunfire lit the night like fireworks spin down behind a vending machine. Ayumi reloaded furiously. We're outnumbered. Hiroshi's eyes scanned the rooftops, then he saw its snipers setting up on the building across the street. This isn't about killing us. He realized they're drawing us out. Ayumi gritted her teeth. Then let's ruin their night together. They fought like wolves, cornered Hiroshi's. Bullets found throats and chests with brutal precision. Ayumi moved with fluid grace. Every shot at kill, bodies fell. The alley painted red, but just as they gained ground, a figure appeared at the far end, tall, muscular, snake tattoo crawling up his neck. The new Viper himself. He didn't raise a gun. He just watched, calm, confident, as if the carnage around him were nothing but theater. Then, with a slow smile, he raised 2 fingers. His men withdrew instantly, melting back into the night. Umi shouted after them, furious, cowards. But Hiroshi stared at the Viper, memorizing his face for the first time. The shadow had stepped into the light and the war was now personal. Back at the safe house, Hiroshi collapsed into a chair, blood seeping from a graze on his arm. Ayumi paced like a caged animal. He let us live, she growled. Why? He had us. Hiroshi exhaled smoke, eyes cold. Because he wants to play, because he thinks he's already won. Ayumi slammed her fist against the wall. Then we make him regret it. Hiroshi stared at the city skyline outside, flames and neon reflecting in his tired eyes. No, he muttered, we don't make him regret, we make him fall. The serpent had shown his face now. It was only a matter of time before Hiroshi struck back, and when he did, Tokyo would burn. The new Viper's name was whispered in Tokyo's alleys, but his true story was buried deep in blood and betrayal. His real name was Kenta Hayashi, born in the back streets of Kawasaki. He grew up in a home that wasn't a home at all. His father drank himself to death when Kenta was 9. His mother sold herself to survive, and by the time he was 12, she disappeared, swallowed by the very city that would one day fear her son on the streets. Weakness was death. Kenta learned fast, stealing food, fighting older boys, running errands for small-time thugs. By 15, he carried a blade at his side and scars across his knuckles, but he wasn't just another street rat. Kenta had something most others lacked, patience where others lashed out. He studied where others wasted money on drugs or gambling. He saved every yen and, he remembered, every insult, every betrayal, every man who looked down on him. His first kill came at 16. A loan shark had beaten his best friend nearly to death. For falling behind on payments, Kenta followed the man into an alley one night and drove a kitchen knife into his ribs again and again until the shark's screams drowned under the sound of rain. Kenta didn't run, he waited, and when the gang came for him, instead of killing him, they offered him a place. "You've got guts," the boss had said. "Work for me, boy, and you'll never starve again." It was the beginning through his late teens and 20s. Kenta climbed the underworld ladder first as an enforcer, then as a fixer, then as a strategist. He was merciless, but not reckless. While others fought for pride, he fought for position. The tattoo came later, the serpent winding up his neck for Kenta. It wasn't decoration, it was a creed. Snakes survive because they shed. He once told a lieutenant, "When they cut off my head, I'll be reborn in another skin. That's what makes us immortal." Those words would one day define his empire. When the old viper, rose to power, Kenta served in his shadow. He studied Ryuji's every move, the way he bribed politicians, controlled police, laundered money, but he also saw weakness. Ryuji's temper, his reliance on tradition, his refusal to adapt to modern crime. While Ryuji clung to the old Yakuza code, Kenta embraced the future: global trafficking, cyber scams, private armies of mercenaries. He began building quiet connections overseas: Russian arms dealers, Chinese triads, South American cartels. By the time Hiroshi and Mika's operation toppled Ryuji, Kenta was already prepared. The old viper's fall wasn't a setback, it was opportunity. The day Ryuji died, Kenta called a secret meeting of surviving lieutenants. Most expected chaos, infighting, a bloody power struggle, but Kenta arrived calm, dressed in black, his serpent tattoo visible under the flicker of cigarette smoke. "Ryuji is gone," he told them, "but the snake lives. I am the skin it wears now." One lieutenant laughed. You were his errand boy. Sit down before." Kenta slit his throat before the man finished speaking. His blood sprayed across the tatami mats. The room went silent. "Anyone else doubt the serpent?" Kenta asked. No one did that night. Kenta Hayashi shed his last skin. He was no longer a boy from Kawasaki, no longer an underling. He became the new viper, and like Ryuji, Kenta ruled with both fear and vision. He wasn't content with running rackets. In Tokyo he wanted control that spanned nations. He reorganized the syndicate into a private army. Masks replaced faces, ranks replaced titles. His men weren't brothers bound by loyalty, they were soldiers bound by obedience. He burned out the old families that resisted him: executions in alleys, whole businesses erased overnight. His message was simple: kneel or be devoured, and they knelt soon. Even politicians whispered his name in fear. Police captains took his calls. Foreign investors laundered his money. Tokyo didn't belong to the people anymore, it belonged to the serpent. Yet Kenta's rise wasn't only about power, it was about revenge deep inside. He never forgot his childhood starving in Kawasaki, mocked as trash, beaten for being poor. Every empire he built, every man he crushed, every yen he stacked, was his answer to the city that once spat him out. When he looked in the mirror, he didn't see a gangster, he saw a god forged from Tokyo's Rotan. Now, a single detective dared to defy him. Kenta had studied Hiroshi to a man who had survived too many battles, too stubborn to quit, too dangerous to ignore. The snake didn't fear him, the snake wanted to break him slowly, publicly, because for Kenta Hayashi, the new viper, power wasn't enough. Power had to be witnessed, and Hiroshi Sato would be his greatest lesson. Back in the safe house, Hiroshi didn't know all the details yet, but as Ayumi and Keiko pored over Kenta's old records, one thing became clear. This man isn't like Ryu, Ayumi said. He doesn't play by the old rules, he builds his own. Keiko tapped the serpent symbol burned into the files. And he doesn't stop. He sheds. Hiroshi lit a cigarette. Staring into the smoke, his mind replayed the Viper's calm face in that alley. The smirk that promised Tokyo was already his. If he wants a lesson, Hiroshi muttered, then I'll give him one snake's bleed like everyone else. Ayumi looked at him. Then it's war, isn't it? Hiroshi's eyes hardened. No, it's extermination. Tokyo slept under neon light. But Hiroshi Sato couldn't sit alone in his apartment. Cigarette smoke curling through the darkness, a gun resting on the table every time he closed his eyes. He saw the Viper's smirk, the calm certainty of a man who believed. Tokyo already belonged to him. Maybe he was right. The Viper's first move the next morning. A package arrived at police headquarters. No sender, no return address inside. A flash drive. A crimson snake drawn on the plastic casing. Keiko plugged it into a secure laptop. A video played. Kenta Hayashi, the new Viper, sat in a leather chair. His serpent tattoo crawling up his neck like it was alive. His voice was calm, almost polite. Detective Sato, he said, smiling faintly. You're a survivor, a fighter. I respect that, but you've made a mistake. You think this is about law and order, about good and evil. It's not. This is about survival, and survival favors the serpent. He leaned forward. I'm not here to kill you. No, I'm here to unmake you. Piece by piece, you'll know what it feels like to lose everything, until the only thing left is the sound of my name. The video ended. Then the laptop screen flickered, replaced by a live feed. A schoolyard, children running and laughing. Ayumi's son, among them. Ayumi's face went pale. That's my boy. The feed cut to black. Message appeared. The serpent watches. Paranoia from that moment on. Hiroshi's unit lived in constant fear. Every move they made, every phone call, every errand. They felt eyes on the Miyomi. Pulled her son out of school, her hands trembling as she packed his bag. Keiko changed her routes to and from work daily, watching every shadow. Even Hiroshi wasn't spared. One night, as he returned home, he found his door unlocked inside. Nothing was missing except for one thing. A photograph of him and his late wife. The frame sat on the floor. The glass-cracked note was tucked behind it. She would have admired my work. Hiroshi's blood ran cold. Breaking points. Days blurred into nights. Arrests were made, but they were meaningless. Low-level thugs, disposable pawns. The Viper's real power was untouched. Then came the second package. This time, a cell phone. It rang as soon as Hiroshi touched ETH. Answered Sato. The Viper's voice slid through the line like silk. You don't sleep, do you? Neither do I. We're not so different. You and I aren't the same, Hiroshi growled. But we are both born from the gutter, both shaped by a city that chews people up. The difference is a pause, then a chuckle. I learned to be the one doing the chewing. Hiroshi gritted his teeth. If you want me, come for me. Leave the others out of it. Noble, but nobility doesn't bleed the way fear does, you see. I don't want your death, detective. Not yet. I want your despair when your partners lose faith, when your city doubts you, when you realize you can't save the ones closest to you. Then you'll understand me. The line went dead. The trap. Keiko slammed her fist against the desk. We can't keep reacting. He's pulling us around like puppets. Ayumi, her voice raw from sleepless nights, whispered. So what do we do? How do you fight a ghost that's everywhere? Hiroshi exhaled slowly. You trap a snake by letting it think you're weak. They looked at him. We give him what he wants. Hiroshi said, me alone, but on my terms. Bait. 2 nights later, Hiroshi staged a scene. Reports were leaked. Falsified documents claiming he was being suspended for misconduct. Rumors spread that he was spiraling, drinking, losing control. Word on the street was that Hiroshi Sato, Tokyo's relentless detective, was finished. The bait worked. At midnight, Hiroshi walked the streets of Shinjuku, coat collar high, cigarette glowing in the rain. He moved like a broken man, weaving through alleys, heading nowhere. But he wasn't alone. Keiko and Ayumi monitored from vans blocks away. Snipers from a special unit perched on rooftops. Every shadow was watched. Hiroshi's heart thudded. As he entered a narrow alley, he could feel it, the weight of eyes on him then. A voice in the darkness, calm, amused. You play the part well. Detective the Viper stepped from the shadows, face partially masked. Serpent tattoo gleaming under the neon spill. His men flanked him. Silent, armed, faceless. You think you can bait me? Kenta said no. Sato, I baited you. You wanted to see me. And here I am. But remember when the snake shows itself. It's already too late. Before Hiroshi could draw his weapon, explosions thundered in the distance. Keiko's frantic voice crackled in his earpiece. Hiroshi, it's a diversion. He's hitting the police archive. Every case file on him, he's burning it all. The Viper smiled coldly. While you were watching the snake, I swallowed the city then. As quickly as he appeared, the Viper vanished into the night, his soldiers melting back into the shadows. The realization back at headquarters. Chaos reigned, firefighters battled, flames consuming the police archive, decades of evidence files, recordings, photographs turned to ash, everything Hiroshi and Mika had once built against Ryuji. Every lead on the new Viper. Gone. Keiko's voice broke. He planned this from the start. The threats, the paranoia, it was all to distract us, Ayumi whispered. He's untouchable. Now Hiroshi stared at the smoke rising in the distance, his fists clenched for the first time. He felt the serpent's coils tightening around him. The Viper hadn't just struck at their lives, he had erased their weapons, rewritten the rules. And Hiroshi knew one thing with chilling certainty. This wasn't just a war anymore, it was a reckoning. The fire at the police archive still smoldered when Tokyo began to unravel in the days that followed. Chaos spread like a contagion. Street gangs, once dormant, suddenly carried new weapons, military-grade rifles, grenades, even armored cars. Extortion rackets doubled overnight. Businesses loyal to the Viper flourished. Those that resisted burned, and, through it all, one symbol kept appearing. The serpent painted on alley walls, carved into doors, projected in neon across abandoned buildings. It wasn't just a crime wave, it was conquest. The collapse in headquarters. Tension ran like electricity. The commissioner pounded his fist on the table. We're losing the city. Public trust is gone. Citizens are panicking. Politicians are calling for resignations. And the media says we've been bought. KCO slammed down a stack of reports because the Viper made sure they'd think that. He burned our evidence, erased our leverage, and now we're playing catch-up while he paints us as corrupt. Ayumi's voice was tight, controlled. He doesn't just want money, he wants Tokyo itself, and he's getting it. All eyes turned to Hiroshi. He leaned back in his chair, exhaustion in his face, cigarette smoke curling in the dim light. This isn't policing anymore, this is war, and wars aren't won by defense. They're won by striking back. The first strike that night. The Viper struck openly. For the first time, a convoy of masked men stormed a Shinjuku precinct, cutting power, hurling Molotovs, and executing officers in cold blood. By the time reinforcements arrived, the station was a smoking ruin, dozens dead, dozens more wounded. The message was clear. The police weren't protectors anymore, they were pre-news footage spread worldwide. Tokyo, once a beacon of order, now looked like a battlefield. Hiroshi's resolve in the safe house. Keiso trembled with rage. He's not even hiding anymore. He wants fear on every screen. Ayumi's hands shook as she reloaded her pistol. And he's winning. If the people lose faith in us completely, he'll own Tokyo forever. Hiroshi ground his cigarette into the ashtray. Then we take the fight to him. No warrants, no waiting. We cut the head off the snake before the city saw. Keiko's eyes widened. You're talking about killing him. I'm talking about survival. The hunt begins. The task force split into cells, each tracking fragments of the Viper's empire, weapon shipments at the docks, encrypted money trails through casinos, hidden safe houses in Shibuya. Each raid was brutal. Gunfire echoed through neon alleys, explosions lit the night sky. Tokyo became a war zone, where civilians huddled indoors while soldiers of shadow claimed the streets. Hiroshi lead from the front, shotguns in hand, grit in his eyes. He stormed dens, and dragged lieutenants out by their throats, but for every man captured, 2 more seemed to rise. The Viper was everywhere and nowhere, watching, waiting. The ambush one evening, Keiko's team received intel on a warehouse packed with weapons. They stormed it, adrenaline high only to find it empty. Then the doors slammed shut, grenades rolled across the floor, explosions ripped through the building, flames swallowed the rafters as masked soldiers poured in. Firing automatic weapons, Keiko dove behind crates. Bullets sparking inches from her face, screams filled the air. Her earpiece crackled with Hiroshi's voice. "Keiko, hold your ground. I'm coming." By the time Hiroshi arrived, half her team was dead. She stumbled from the wreckage, her arms shredded by shrapnel, her face pale with shock. He knew. She gasped. "He was waiting for us." The serpent speaks again hours later. Another package arrived, another video this time. The Viper wasn't seated calmly. He stood before the burning ruins of the warehouse, his serpent tattoo gleaming in the firelight. "You see, detective," he said, smiling coldly, "every move you make. I already own every ally you send. I already bury this city. Doesn't need police anymore. It needs a god, and I am that god." He leaned closer to the camera. "Your friends will fall, one by one, until only you remain. And then when you're finally alone, I'll decide whether you live to suffer or die to feed my legend." The feed cut the line. Ayumi slammed her fist into the table. "He's bleeding us out. Hiroshi, we can't keep chasing him. We'll lose everything." Keiko, bandaged and pale, whispered, "He's right. We're already losing." Hiroshi's eyes burned with something beyond rage, beyond duty. "This ends now." Ayumi's voice sharpened. "What do you mean?" Hiroshi stood, his shadow stretching long against the wall. "I've fought men like him before, but this one, he doesn't fear the law, he doesn't fear prison. The only thing he fears is death, so that's what I'll give him." Keiko's voice cracked. "If you do this, Hiroshi, there's no coming back. You'll be no different than him." Hiroshi's jaw tightened. "Maybe that's what it takes." The war begins. Word spread across Tokyo's underworld that the detective wasn't waiting anymore. Hiroshi Sato was hunting not for arrests, for kills every night. Another warehouse burned, another lieutenant disappeared, another serpent soldier was found dead in alleys, their masks torn away, their weapons scattered in the rain. The people of Tokyo whispered again, not of the Viper, but of the ghost hunting him. The city had a new shadow. Even criminals feared the Viper, watched from his high-rise tower. A glass of sake in hand, his serpent tattoo twisted as he smirked at the skyline. "Good," he whispered finally. "The detective sheds his skin now. The war is worthy of me." The city was drowning in shadows. Tokyo's streets crackled with gunfire. Its alleys stank of gasoline and blood. But the real war wasn't just in the street. Sit was inside Hiroshi's unit. The Viper had promised he'd take Hiroshi apart piece by piece, and now that promise came true. The whisper, it started with small fractures. Sumi's calls went unanswered some nights. Keiko noticed her reports weren't filed on time. Hiroshi brushed it off. At first, everyone was exhausted, broken, carrying scars, but then Ayumi snapped at him during a briefing. "You don't care about my son, do you? You drag me deeper into this war while he hides in fear every day." Hiroshi froze. He'd never heard her voice cracked like that. Keiko tried to calm her. "This isn't him, it's the Viper doing this to us." Ayumi's eyes glistened with fury. Maybe the Viper's right. Maybe Hiroshi only cares about his vendetta. The room went silent. They offered 2 nights later. Ayumi received a call, a number she didn't recognize when she answered. The voice that slithered through the line chilled her to her bones. "Inspector Ayumi, you're a mother before you're a soldier, aren't you? You think about your son every night, about the danger he's in because of Detective Sato." Her hand trembled. "What do you want?" "I want you safe. I want your boy safe. I can give you both that. A passport, a new life far from this war. All I ask in return is silence. Walk away, or bring me the detective, and you'll never fear again." Ayumi's breath caught. She hung up, but the seed had been planted. The cracks widened in the safe. Tension snapped like wires pulled to tight. Keiko confronted Hiroshi. "You're pushing us to the edge, and you don't even see it. Ayumi's breaking half the unit. Whispers you've gone rogue." Hiroshi lit a cigarette, his face a mask of stone. "The Viper wants us divided. Don't give him what he wants." Ayumi's voice cut in, sharp. "You already gave him what he wanted. You're playing his game. You've turned us into killers. Just like him." Hiroshi turned, his eyes like fire. "The difference is, I'm killing to stop him. He's killing to rule." Ayumi's fists clenched, her voice trembling. "Tell that to the families of the men who've died following you." Silence, heavy, unforgiving. The betrayal that night, as rain hammered Tokyo's streets. Hiroshi went out alone, tracking a tip about a weapons convoy headed through Shinagawa. But when he arrived, the convoy was gone. Only silence and shadows remained. Then gunfire, explosions. His men caught in an ambush 2 blocks away. Screams tore through the Kumskikos. Panicked voice crackled. It was a setup. Someone gave him our roots. Hiroshi's heart dropped. He already knew Yumithi. Confrontation. He found her hours later, standing in the safe house with her pistol trembling in her hand. Her face was streaked with tears, her body shaking like a storm. "You knew," Hiroshi said soft. Ayumi's voice cracked. "He promised me safety for my boy. He promised I'd never have to bury him. You think he'll keep that promise?" Hiroshi stepped closer, his voice low, steady. "The Viper doesn't save, he consumes. If you give him me, he'll take you next, and then your son." Her finger tightened on the trigger for one terrible heartbeat. Hiroshi thought she might actually pull it, but then the pistol clattered to the floor. Ayumi dropped to her knees, sobbing, her hands covering her face. "I just wanted him safe," she whispered. "I just wanted him safe." Hiroshi crouched beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder for the first time in years. His voice softened. "So did I. That's why I fight. That's why I can't stop the Viper's message." The next morning, another package arrived at headquarters. Inside, a blood-stained mask, the kind the Viper's soldiers wore, and a note, "Your serpent sheds, but even the skin it leaves behind is poisonous. You think you won tonight, detective, but all you've won is another day to watch your people break." Hiroshi crushed the note in his fist, his jaw tight with rage. The oath. Later that night, as Keiko patched up the wounded and Ayumi sat silently in the corner, Hiroshi stood at the window, staring at the neon city below. He lit a cigarette, the glow reflecting in his eyes. "He's inside our heads," Keiko murmured. "He's turning us against each other. Then we stop playing his game." Hiroshi muttered. Smoke curled through the air like ghosts. "We take the war to his doorstep. No more chasing shadows. We find the serpent's nest, and we burn it to the ground." Ayumi looked up, her eyes red and hollow. "And if it kills us?" Hiroshi turned, his face a mask of resolve. "Then we make sure he dies first outside." Thunder cracked across Tokyo's sky. The storm had arrived. The final war was coming. Tokyo's skyline glowed under rain, but beneath its neon, the city was splitting open. The Viper's grip was everywhere. Now businesses paying tribute, politicians bending knees, even cops whispering obedience. But Hiroshi had something the Viper didn't. Desperation fled. 3 nights after Ayumi's near betrayal, Keiko burst into the safe house, clutching a flash drive. Her arm was still bandaged from shrapnel, but her eyes burned with fire. "I found it," she said. "The money trail. He's laundering billions through shell casinos in Kabuki. But one account isn't hidden. He slipped up an overseas transfer that didn't get cleaned." Ayumi leaned forward to where Keiko's lips curled into a grim smile. "Okinawa, a private island registered under one of his shell companies. If he has a headquarters, if he has a throne, that's where it is." Hiroshi crushed out his cigarette. "Then that's where we end it." The preparation. The unit spent days in silence, each move heavy with finality. Weapons were cleaned, ammunition stockpiled, maps memorized. Ayumi checked her pistol again and again, her hands steady now. "No more hesitation," she muttered. "If he wants to rip this city apart, I'll be the one to put him down." Keiso studied satellite images, pointing at hidden bunkers and tunnels. He's not just hiding, he's fortified cameras, drones, mercenaries. Once we step foot there, it's war. Hiroshi said nothing. He just loaded his shotgun, the sound echoing like thunder in the room. The journey they moved under cover of night. No official orders, no backup, just 3 soldiers against an empire. The boat rocked under a stormy sky as they approached the island. The silhouette of the fortress rose ahead, steel walls, floodlights sweeping across the water. The serpent's emblem carved into the main. Gatayomi whispered, "It looks like a goddamn kingdom." Hiroshi's eyes narrowed. Then tonight, the king dies. The nest they landed in silence, moving like shadows through the underbrush. Keiko disabled cameras with a jammer, while Ayumi cut down 2 guards with silenced shots. The fortress was alive with activity trucks unloading weapons, soldiers in masks patrolling, the air buzzing with tension. Hiroshi's gut tightened. This wasn't just a hideout, it was an army base inside. The walls were lined with weapons, crates, stacks of cash, and screens displaying Tokyo in real time. The serpent's eyes weren't just in the streets, they were everywhere. Keiko's voice trembled. He's watching the whole city from here, every camera, every feed. He owns Tokyo. Ayumi's jaw clenched, not for long. The shrine. At the center of the fortress stood a shrine-like chamber. Red lanterns glowed, incense burned, and there, on the wall, the serpent symbol stretched from floor to ceiling. Beneath it sat a throne of steel and wood, empty, but on the throne lay a single object, a katana, its blade black as midnight, its hilt wrapped in crimson cloth. Hiroshi stared at it, unease prickling his skin. He's mocking us. Ayumi's voice was flat, or welcoming us before they could decide. A slow clap echoed through the chamber from the shadows. The Viper stepped forward. His serpent tattoo gleamed under the lantern light, his face calm, his smile cold. "I wondered when the great detective Sato would arrive," he said softly. "Tokyo wasn't enough for you. You had to come to my temple?" Hiroshi raised his shotgun. "Your temple burns tonight." The Viper chuckled, then let the fire begin. The ambush. The walls exploded inward as masked soldiers stormed the chamber. Gunfire erupted, bullets shattering lanterns, flames licking across the floor. Hiroshi dove behind a pillar, blasting 2 men with his shotgun. Keiko rolled across the ground, firing controlled bursts from her rifle. Ayumi fought like a storm, her pistol cracking. Every shot a kill, but there were too many. The Viper stood in the chaos, untouched, serene, like a conductor guiding an orchestra of violence. "You fight well, detective," he called over the gunfire. "But this isn't your war anymore. This is my kingdom." Hiroshi reloaded, his eyes burning. Kingdoms fall. The escape's flames consumed the shrine. Keiso tossed a grenade, clearing a path. "We can't win here. Too many." Ayumi fired cover shots. "We came to end him." "We will," Hiroshi growled, but not trapped in his nest. They fought their way out, bloodied and bruised, sprinting through tunnels as explosions rattled the walls behind them. The serpent's fortress burned, but the Viper still lived as their boat pulled away from the island. Hiroshi looked back at the inferno, the serpent's symbol glowing red in the firelight. Keiko's voice was hoarse. "We hurt him, but we didn't kill him." Hiroshi's cigarette glowed in the dark. His face was carved from stone. "No, not yet, but this was just the beginning." Ayumi stared at the flames, her voice low, resolute. "Then the next time we see him, one of us doesn't walk away." Tokyo moved on, as if nothing had happened. Salarymen hurried through Shinjuku Station. Students chattered on trains. Neon signs pulsed in Kabucho. But beneath the surface, the city was bleeding. The Viper's failed ambush hadn't broken him, it had unleashed him. The wound, the safe house reeked of smoke, blood, and antiseptic. Keiko's arm was freshly stitched. Ayumi's ribs were cracked. Hiroshi sat with his shirt half burned away, a cigarette trembling between his fingers. None of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Ayumi broke the silence. "We failed." Keito glared at her. "We didn't fail. We're alive. That fortress isn't. We exposed him." Ayumi shook her head. "No, He wanted us to live. He could have killed us in there. He let us crawl away. Hiroshi exhaled smoke, his voice hoarse. She's right. That wasn't an ambush. That was theater. Keiso frowned. Then what was the point? To tell Tokyo the serpent is here, Hiroshi said, and he owns it. The broadcast that night. Every screen in Shinjuku lit up with the same Fide man in a crimson suit. Serpent tattoo curling up his neck. The viper, his voice was calm, smooth, poisonous for too long. Tokyo has been carved by weak men, hiding behind laws and uniforms tonight. I give you a choice, obey the serpent or drown in the chaos. The camera shifted, revealing 3 men kneeling behind him, politicians bound, gagged. Terrified, the viper drew a blade across their throats, one by one. Blood splashed onto the lens, the feed cut to black within hours. Riots broke out across Kabucho. Gangs stormed pachinko parlors. Shops burned, and even police officers disappeared into alleys, never to return. The serpent's war had begun. The divide back at the safe house. Ayumi slammed her fist against the table. We should have killed him on that island now. The whole city pays the price. Keiko snapped back. And how exactly? With 20 men against 300. We'd be corpses in the dirt. Better us than Tokyo, Ayumi. Hiroshi raised his voice, silencing them both enough. This isn't about what we should have done. It's about what we will do. He stood, shoulders heavy, but eyes sharp. The viper thinks this city is his kingdom. Then we take the kingdom from him, brick by brick, street by street. Ayumi met his gaze, fire in her voice. And when we face him again. Hiroshi crushed his cigarette, the ember glowing like a dying star this time. One of us doesn't walk away the Alyssa the next day. Hiroshi reached out to old ghosts, retired detectives, disillusioned cops, even former Yakuza lieutenants who'd lost families to the Viper's rise, men and women with scars, grudges, and nothing left to lose. They gathered in a warehouse by Tokyo Bay. Some carried pistols, others machetes. A few brought nothing but rage. Hiroshi stood before them, his voice raw but steady. The Viper believes he owns this city. He believes he can buy it, burn it, bleed it into submission, but Tokyo doesn't belong to him. Tokyo belongs to the people who built it, who bled for it tonight. We fight not for law, not for orders, but for survival. The room erupted in fists, pounding tables, voices roaring in unison for the first time. Hiroshi saw something close to hope that trapped that night. Keiso intercepted chatter the Vipers. Men were moving shipments, guns, explosives. Fuel trucks into the heart of Kabaki. Choyumi's eyes narrowed. He's going to burn it, the whole district. Hiroshi loaded his shotgun. Not if we burn him first. The descent. Kabuko was already chaos when they arrived. Neon lights flickered against smoke. Drunken rioters smashed windows, and masked soldiers prowled the streets with rifles. Hiroshi's ragtag army fanned out, striking from alleys and rooftops. Gunfire cracked, knives flashed, Molotovs lit the night. Skyumi fought like a storm, cutting through soldiers with surgical precision. Keiso hacked into surveillance feeds, directing the resistance like a conductor. Hiroshi charged down the main street, his shotgun booming with every step. The serpent's men scattering like insects, but then the sky itself seemed to split open. A convoy of black armored trucks rolled into the district, mounted on top turrets. Flamethrowers and men in crimson masks. At the center of the convoy stood the Viper, arms spread wide, his voice echoing across the chaos. Tokyo burns, tonight. The clash, the streets erupted in fire, buildings ignited, bullets rained, and screams rose into the night. Hiroshi's forces fought desperately, but the Viper's men pushed forward like a tide of steel and blood. Ayumi fired until her pistol clicked empty, then drew her blade, slicing through the smoke. Keiko screamed into her radio, calling for retreats, counterattacks, anything to hold the line. Hiroshi's vision blurred with blood and fire through the inferno. He saw the Viper standing on a truck, untouched, smiling as if he were watching a masterpiece. Their eyes locked. The serpent raised his hand, signaling the kill. Hiroshi raised his shotgun, signaling the fight, and Tokyo itself trembled between them. Tokyo had seen chaos before earthquakes. bombs, yakuza wars, but nothing like this. The city's sleepless heart was now a war zone. Flames climbed neon towers, sirens wailed without end, and streets ran red. The serpent was keeping his promise. Tokyo was drowning. The inferno. Hiroshi sprinted through smoke, his shotgun blasting holes into crimson-masked soldiers around him. His ragtag fighters screamed, bled, and Felkako's voice crackled in his earpiece, barely audible through static. They're everywhere. Hiroshi, I'm losing the cameras. The Viper has drones in the air. We can't hold this line. Ayumi's blade flashed beside him, slicing down two mercenaries in a blur. Her eyes were wild, her voice hoarse. We don't hold it. We cut the head off the snake. Hiroshi nodded, once his lungs burned. His ribs ached, but there was no hesitation. Now, they had to reach the Viper. The convoy of armored trucks carved through the streets like monsters of steel, and fire-mounted turrets cut down civilians and rebels alike. The center, standing tall on the lead truck like a warlord, was the Viper himself, crimson suit glowing in the firelight, serpent tattoo writhing on his neck. He looked untouchable. Untouchable until Hiroshi's shotgun blasted one of the turret gunners clean off the roof. The Viper turned his head slowly, locking eyes with the detective. Even at this distance, Hiroshi could feel the venom in that smile. Yami grabbed his arm. He sees you. Hiroshi's lips curled into something between a grimace and a grin. Good. The push. The streets narrowed, funneling the convoy into a choke point. Keiko's voice cut back in, urgent. I've got traffic barriers and old construction rigs blocking the south exit if you're going to corner him. It has to be here, but you won't get another chance. Hiroshi reloaded, blood dripping from his temple. Then we make it count. Ayumi pulled two grenades from her belt. Yanking the pins with her teeth, she hurled them into the second truck hand. Eruption of fire tore it apart, scattering mercenaries into the flames. Hiroshi's fighters swarmed the street, screaming war cries, hurling Molotovs. The serpent's army returned fire with brutal precision, bullets tearing into walls and flesh. But Hiroshi didn't stop moving. He pushed forward, every step heavier, every breath sharper. The fire swallowed everything behind him. The duel approaches. The Viper leaped from his truck with the grace of a predator. His katana gleamed black in the inferno, crimson cloth fluttering in the flames. The serpent didn't shout, didn't command. He simply moved, and his soldiers seemed to orbit him, shielding him as he advanced. The Ami snarled, "He's mine." Hiroshi's voice cut her down. No, he's mine for years. The serpent had been a shadow, a whisper, a ghost behind every death, every betrayal, every scar. Tonight, that ghost had flesh, and Hiroshi would bleed at the clash of armies. Gunfire tore the street apart. Rebels and mercenaries clashed hand to hand, blades flashing, screams rising above the fire. Keiko's voice in Hiroshi's ear grew desperate. Hiroshi, you don't understand. He wants this. He's pulling you into the open if you fight him here. With all his men around, static swallowed her words as an explosion ripped through the block. Hiroshi ripped the earpiece out, deaf to everything but the thunder of his own heartbeat. Me spun beside him, her blade dripping. We cut through, together. Hiroshi's shotgun barked again. Together they drove forward through fire, through blood, toward the serpent, and the detective at last. There was nothing between them. The Viper stepped forward, calm, composed, his katana reflecting firelight like a serpent's tongue. His soldiers held back now, forming a ring around the street, as if watching gladiators in an arena. Hiroshi's chest heaved, sweat and blood staining his shirt. His shotgun was nearly empty, but his grip was iron. The serpent tilted his head, voice soft but carrying through the roar of flames. Detective Sato, you've chased me through shadows, through blood, through fire. Tell me, was it worth it? Hiroshi spat into the dirt, his voice a growl. Ask the bodies you left behind. The serpent's smile widened, then let us join them. The circle of fiery Ami tried to step forward, but two of the Viper's guards blocked her path with blades. She screamed, Hiroshi, But Hiroshi didn't look back. His eyes never left the serpent. The street was fire, the city was screaming, and in the center of it, two men faced each other, one a serpent who wanted to own Tokyo, the other a detective who had nothing left but raged. The serpent raised his katana, Hiroshi raised his shotgun. The ring of soldiers tightened. The fire roared higher, and for a heartbeat, all of Tokyo seemed to hold its breath. Kabuko burned, flames licked neon towers. Smoke coiled into the night sky, and Tokyo itself seemed to scream, but in the center of the inferno, silence fell, a circle of fire. 2. Minnow escaped. The first strike, the Viper moved first. His katana cut through the air in a black arc. Swift as lightning, Hiroshi ducked. Shotgun blasting at point-blank range, the serpent twisted. The blast grazing his shoulder, but not slowing his steps. Sparks flew as steel clashed against steel beams and shattered glass. The serpent's blade danced with precision. Every strike a predator's lunge, Hiroshi countered with raw brutality, point-blank shots. Elbows, knees, fists, each impact echoed like thunder in the burning street. The predator, the Viper, was calm, almost graceful. He moved like the smoke itself, weaving between fire and bullets. His voice dripped poison. Even as they fought, "You're slow. Detective age and grief weigh you down. You can't stop what's already begun," Hiroshi snarled, blood dripping from his temple. "Neither could your father, and I put him in the ground." To the serpent's eyes flared. The next strike came harder, faster. The katana, a storm of black steel, Hiroshi barely parried with his shotgun, sparks blinding his vision. The fall, the serpent's blade slashed across Hiroshi's chest, pain ripped through him. Blood staining his shirt, he staggered back, knees buckling, vision blurring. The serpent raised his blade high, smiling like a god. "Die knowing Tokyo is mine." But Hiroshi wasn't done. He ripped the last shell from his belt, slammed it into the shotgun, and fired. The blast tore into the serpent's side, sending him crashing against the flaming wreckage of a truck. The circle of soldiers around them roared, some rushing forward, others holding back, unsure if their master had fallen. The rise, smoke and fire swallowed the street for a moment. Silence. Then the serpent rose, bleeding, coughing, but standing tall, his crimson suit shredded, his serpent tattoo glistening with sweat and blood. He lifted his katana again, slower now, but no less deadly. His eyes locked onto Hiroshi's, burning with hatred and something deeper, fear. "You think you've hurt me." His voice was ragged but venomous. "I am Tokyo, even if I die. The city bends to my will." Hiroshi spat blood, gripping the shotgun like a lifeline. "Then I'll break Tokyo's will." The close combat, the shotgun was empty now. Hiroshi dropped it. Fists tightening, the serpent lunged again. Katana slashing, Hiroshi dodged by inches, countering with a brutal punch to the ribs. They fought hand to hand, blade against bone, precision against fury. Each strike sent blood spraying, each movement carving scars into the burning street. The serpent's blade cut across Hiroshi's arm. Hiroshi's fist shattered the serpent's jaw. Both men staggered, both bleeding, both refusing to fall around them. The soldiers chanted, the fire roared, and Ayumi's screams echoed from the edge of the circle. "Hiroshi, don't you dare fall." The edged, the serpent drove Hiroshi against a wall of fire. Katana pressed against his throat. The heat seared his skin, smoke choking his lungs. "Say it," the serpent hissed, blade cutting skin. "Say you've lost. Say Tokyo is mine." Hiroshi's eyes blazed through the smoke. He grabbed the blade with his bare hand, blood pouring down his palm. His voice was a growl, raw and final. "Tokyo doesn't belong to snakes." With a roar, he wrenched the blade aside and headbutted the serpent. Bone cracking on bone, both men collapsed to the ground, coughing, bleeding, crawling through fire. The standoff, they faced each other on their knees, barely standing, the katana lying between them. The serpent reached for it with trembling fingers. Hiroshi reached too, blood dripping from his hand. For a heartbeat, the entire world froze. Fire, soldiers, screams, everything held its breath. Then Hiroshi's hand closed on the blade. First he lifted it. The serpent's own weapon, black steel, glowing in firelight. The serpent's eyes widened, not fear, not rage, but disbelief. You can't. Hiroshi's voice was a whisper of thunder. Watch me, the final cut. The blade flashed, blood sprayed across the burning street. The serpent fell, his body hit the ground, eyes still open, staring at the sky as if in shock that death had come for him. His soldiers gasped, stepping back, their chants dying into silence. Hiroshi stood over him, katana dripping, chest heaving. His face was carved from stone, his body barely holding together for the first time in years. The serpent's smile was gone, but then a cough, twitch. The serpent's hand clenched, his voice rasping through blood. You can't kill a god. And the fire roared higher, as if Tokyo itself refused to let the battle end. The street was silent, but for the roar of fire. The serpent lay bleeding in the dirt, katana wound deep in his side, blood pouring like black ink across the neon glow. Yet he lived. The serpent's defiance. The viper coughed, crimson splattering against his teeth. He laughed through the blood, a guttural, broken sound. You think this ends with me? His voice was cracked, but venomous. Tokyo will never be yours, even if I die. The city is mine, my blood, my name, my empire. Hiroshi stood above him, katana trembling in his hand. His chest heaved, vision swimming with blood and smoke. You're no empire, Hiroshi spat. You're just another rat in the dark. The serpent's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a faint smile, even as he bled. Then kill me, detective, do it, and watch as the city tears itself apart. Without me. The decision. Hiroshi raised the blade, his knuckles white, his arm heavy with the weight of vengeance. Every scar, every corpse, every ghost screamed for him to finish. Etomi's voice cut through the fire. Do it, Hiroshi. End him. Keiko's voice followed, sharp, trembling. No, don't you see? That's what he wants you. Kill him, and his men will turn him into a martyr. Tokyo will worship his ghost. The circle of soldiers around them shifted uneasily. Their serpent was dying, but their eyes burned with loyalty. Kill him, and they might erupt. Spare him, and they might doubt. Hiroshi's breath caught, his arm shook. The weight of Tokyo pressed down on the blade. The interruption, before the decision could fall. The night split open with floodlights. Armored vehicles screeched into Kabukicho. Heavily armed men in black uniforms stormed the streets, rifles raised. Not Yakuza, not rebels. Government. A commanding voice barked through a megaphone. Drop your weapons. This district is under state lockdown. Anyone resisting will be executed. The serpent's men froze, torn between loyalty and survival. Ayumi cursed under her breath. The bastards finally show up. Keiko's face went pale. They're not here to save us. They're here to bury everyone. The snatched soldiers in black rushed forward, dragging the serpent's broken body away from Hiroshi's feet. He screamed and swung the katana, but a dozen rifles snapped to aim at him. Stand down, detective, a voice barked. This isn't your war anymore. Hiroshi's heart thundered. The serpent, coughing blood, still managed to smile as they dragged him toward an armored van. See, detective, he rasped, voice echoing through the chaos. Even your government kneels to the serpent. You can't kill a god. The van door slammed shut, engines roaring within seconds. The serpent was gone, vanished into the machinery of power. The collapse. Hiroshi fell to his knees, the katana slipping from his hand around him. The fires of Kabukicho still burned, but the battle was over. The serpent's soldiers scattered into alleys, fading like shadows at dawn. The government troops tightened their cordon, forcing Hiroshi's rebels to drop weapons or die. Where they stood, Ayumi knelt beside him, gripping his arm. We had him. He was finished. Keiko shook her head, rage and despair twisting her voice. Finished? No, now he's untouchable. They'll protect him, use him, maybe even unleash him again when it suits them. Hiroshi's gaze was empty, locked on the blood-stained street where the serpent had fallen. His voice was hoarse, almost broken. Then, Tokyo isn't at war with the serpent. Tokyo is at war with itself. The ghost. Hours later, the fires still burned. The city was scarred, bodies scattered across the ruins of Kabachika, but whispers spread faster than flames. Some said the Viper had been killed by the detective. His body burned to ash in the inferno. Others claimed he was alive, spirited away by men in black, ready to return stronger than ever. And in the shadows of Tokyo, his mark, the serpent's emblem, began appearing again, spray-painted on walls, carved into tables, drawn in blood. Day, God, dead or alive, still watching the oath in the ruins. Hiroshi sat against a broken wall, his chest wrapped in bandages, his hands still raw from gripping the blade. Ayumi and Keiko stood beside him, both silent, both broken. Finally, Ayumi spoke. So what now? If he's alive, how do we kill him when even the government shields him? Hiroshi lit a cigarette with trembling hands. The flame shook, but stayed alive. His eyes glowed through the smoke. Harder than steel we keep fighting, he said. Not for law, not for the city, for every ghost he left behind, for every name he erased. Keiko asked quietly, and if it never ends? Hiroshi exhaled, the smoke curling like a serpent into the night. Then we don't end either. Tokyo looked calm again. The fires of Kabukicho had been extinguished, the streets cleaned, neon signs repaired, newspapers spoke of gang clashes, not war. Television anchors smiled, assuring citizens order had returned. But for Hiroshi, Ayumi, and Keiko, the silence was more terrifying than the flames. The cover a pot, the safe house. Keiko hammered her laptop keys. Fury in every keystroke. They scrubbed everything, every news feed, every video. Every witness reported gone. Kabukicho wasn't a battlefield, it was a gas leak explosion. According to NHK, Ayumi slammed her fist against the table. Gas leak. Over 100 people dead, entire blocks burned, and they call it a gas leak. Keiko nodded, trembling with rage. And guess what? Every name of the dead is sealed. Families can't even bury their own. This isn't clean up, it's erasure. Hiroshi leaned in the corner, cigarette glowing faintly. His voice was low, steady. The Viper didn't escape. He was extracted, protected, and now they're burying the truth with the bodies. The visitor that night, as rain slicked the alleys outside the safe. A knock came at the door, not frantic, not timid, a steady, deliberate rhythm. Ayumi drew her pistol instantly. No one knows we're here. Hiroshi motioned for silence. He opened the door. A man in a gray suit stepped inside, unarmed, soaked in rain. His face was thin, his eyes tired, a government face. He didn't introduce himself. He simply said, "You're not wrong. Detective, the serpent is alive, and he's theirs now. The truth." The man placed a sealed folder on the table. Inside were photographs, grainy surveillance images of the Viper, strapped to a hospital bed, tubes in his veins, government doctors working over him like he was a prized specimen. Another photo showed him awake, smiling, surrounded by men in suits. Keiko's breath caught. He's not a prisoner, he's a partner. The man nodded grimly. The Viper's empire isn't just tolerated anymore, it's being woven into the state. Politicians will funnel his money, bureaucrats will hide his crimes, and in exchange, he delivers what no one else can: fear, loyalty, and silence on the streets. Ayumi spat on the floor. They're giving him the city. The man's voice was hollow. They already have the warning. Hiroshi narrowed his eyes. Why tell us? If you're with them, you should have killed us already. The man hesitated, his hands trembling. Because I made the mistake of believing in this country, believing the system would save us. But after Kabuki, I saw the truth. The government doesn't want the serpent dead. They want him crowned, Keiko whispered. Then what happens to Tokyo? The man's reply was quiet, almost broken. It becomes a kingdom where crime isn't punished. It's taxed, where violence isn't hidden. It's managed. The serpent is the new order. He stood, pulling his coat tight. If you fight him now, you're not just fighting gangs, you're fighting the state itself. The silence after the man left. The safe house felt colder. Mallory paced. Fury etched into every step. So what? We stop now. Crawl into a hole and let him run this city like a god. Keiko slammed the laptop shut. No, but we have to be smarter. They'll erase us like they erased Kabukicho. If we move too openly, we're ghosts now. Hiroshi sat in the shadows, his face unreadable finally. He spoke. Ghosts can still kill gods. The cracks in the wall days turned into weeks. Tokyo wore its mask while salarymen in suits. Trains on schedule. Neon lights bright as ever. But beneath the surface, Hiroshi saw the cracks. Whispers of new taxes in Kabukicho. Businesses forced to pay serpent fees directly to government offices. Police patrols disappearing from certain districts entirely, replaced by masked men with crimson tattoos. The serpent wasn't hiding anymore. He was becoming a vigilante. The people were too afraid or too beaten to resist the oath renewed one night. As rain hammered the city again, Hiroshi gathered Ayumi and Keiko on the rooftop of a half-burned building. The skyline stretched endless. Glowing but hollow, he lit a cigarette. The flame tiny against the storm. They think they've buried us. They think they own Tokyo, but ghosts don't die. We keep moving, we keep striking, and when the time comes, we cut the serpent's head off even if it wears a crown. Ayumi's eyes burned. Even if it kills us. Hiroshi exhaled smoke into the rain. Especially if it kills us. And that brings us to the end of this chapter of Tokyo Crime Stories. A city that shines so brightly on the surface, yet bleeds in the shadows. The serpent may have found new power, but as long as there are ghosts who refuse to bow, the fight isn't over. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me next time where we'll whisper yet another tale of crime, power, and betrayal.